Prince William touches down in New York City as Prince Harry wraps up the Invictus Games. Plus, Princess Diana's sheep sweater breaks records. And author of After Elizabeth, Ed Owens, reveals where the monarchy goes from here and if the royal family regrets how Harry and Meghan left.
The king still has to be seen to at least hold out an olive branch to his youngest son.
We got that plus so much more in today's Royally Us. Everyone, Christina Garibaldi here with Christine Ross, and welcome to another big week of royal news. Prince William is in our neighborhood.
How exciting. I love when there's royals in America. It's really, everyone sort of gets really twice as excited when they're, sort of, especially in New York City.
Definitely. Hopefully we'll get a sighting, but I'm not sure. He's not here for very long, but hopefully. We're going to talk all about that in just a second, but we want to see what you guys had to say about last week's show. One user said that interview with Mike and the Royals was great. I agree. We were saying last week when they sit down and speak with somebody that they're very comfortable with, you get these great little tidbits of information.
Yeah, this reminds me a lot of when Kate did Giovanna Fletcher's podcast a few years ago. The podcast episodes, they're so good. Can we please have a few more? I mean,
yes, please.
Keep them coming.
Right? And then Joanne says, Harry never showed his respect when the late Queen was alive and instead made her last few years more difficult than it should have been. Harry has no right to claim that he loves and respects the late Queen while trying to get good publicity for himself from the anniversary of her death. Harry needs to remember that actions speak louder than words. It seems like the Harry and the Queen did have a very good relationship, and I'm sure a lot of people in the comments were like, he shouldn't have used her anniversary as a photo op, but I think everything Harry does, people are going to have something to say.
I know, exactly. It's like it's a lose-lose. If he didn't say anything, he's heartless, and how could he forget about her? And if he does say something, he's taking advantage and using it for a photo op. So it's a lose-lose, another situation where Harry just isn't going to get it right.
Isn't going to get a break, but we will talk about Harry in just a second. But like we said, Prince William is in New York City. He touched down on September 18th, one day before he is due to attend the Earthshot Prize Innovation Summit at the Plaza Hotel. And he jumped in feet first. So on his first day in the city, he paid a visit to Governor's Island, where he met with volunteers of the Billion Oysters Project and student at the New York Harbor School. So students were delighted and surprised to see the prince, whose appearance had been kept a secret until the last minute. I'm sure that they were absolutely thrilled. He didn't hesitate to join volunteers as they waded waist deep in the murky New York Harbor waters to inspect an oyster reef by Brooklyn Bridge Park. He also paid a visit to an oyster hatchery and a pile of oyster shells donated by New York City restaurants in an effort to restore the oyster reefs on Governor's Island. Yeah, you couldn't pay me to get into that water, but good for Prince William.
I think we need to make it clear to everyone listening and watching today that water is really gross. This is a very impressive thing that Prince William has done.
I guess he didn't get the memo about that, but yeah, so good for him. Like we said, he is here for the Earthshot Summit. So we're going to know who the finalists are for the Earthshot Awards that are happening in a couple months in Singapore. So definitely fun that he is in town, and the royals are getting back in the swing of things. Like we said before, King Charles is going to actually visit Paris this week as well, right?
Yep, he's going to Paris on this sort of delayed state visit that was delayed earlier this year because of protests, and it's going to be quite a glittering event. The schedule of events included like a state dinner at the Palace of Versailles, so we're hopeful for some big glittering tiara moments from Queen Camilla. I think there's a lot to look forward to.
Definitely. All right, moving on over to Prince Harry. He had a successful Invictus Games, and he seemingly referenced his own journey in military uniform while closing out the games. He said, I'm here to remind you that after all of this, you don't need to rely on uniform, nor should you ever feel lost without one. Why? Because everything you need is already within you. Now, his message may have also acted as a reminder to himself. He served in the British Army for 10 years, completing 2 tours in Afghanistan before resigning from the military back in 2015. A lot of people were saying that, maybe this was in reference to him losing his military titles, that the uniform doesn't make you the person that you are. And that's kind of the message that he was conveying.
Yeah, I think whether it's sort of his more recent, the military titles that he lost more recently when he left the royal family, which those were technically honorary, but not really, or, just when he retired nearly 10 years ago. I think this is just him relating to these people and just sort of saying, hey, I was just like you, or, you know, in a very similar role, because I think that's really when Harry shines best and connects best with people, is when he can sort of relate to them. Even though he's in this really unique position, he still has similar life experiences, and people really love that, and it resonates well.
It really does. And Meghan Markle did make the trip over to Germany to be with him during the closing ceremony, and also to celebrate his 39th birthday. They took a break from the Invictus Games, and they marked the occasion at the Golden Kessel, a traditional German restaurant in Dusseldorf. According to the restaurant staff, they sampled an array of the country's classic cuisine, and one of the waiters said that they enjoyed 6 small beers before trying the Wiener Schnitzel, pork knuckle, sausage, and plates of roast and mashed potatoes. I mean, that sounds like a good way to celebrate your 39th birthday.
It sounds like lots of fun, lots of local cuisine. I'm sure they had a great night out. It was nice that they could sort of, you know, get out on the town and step away from all the Invictus work to celebrate.
Definitely. Well, Kate Middleton is back at work and making her debut as the Commodore-in-Chief of the Fleet Air Arm. So she visited the Royal Naval Air Station in Somerset, marking the first outing in her new royal role. Now, over the summer, King Charles appointed his daughter-in-law as the Commodore-in-Chief Fleet Air Arm, and she took over the role from Prince Andrew, who held the position until 2022. And like we said, she's kind of getting back in the swing of things. She's got a bunch of new positions that she has been taking on recently as King Charles, you know, slims down the monarchy and, you know, assigns these roles to the senior royal members of the family.
Yeah, it is. It's so cool to see her in these new roles, visiting these places. And it's really cool to see posts from the organizations themselves, just people who have been there who say this is such a huge honor. It really means a lot to these people from these organizations to have the Princess of Wales representing them, visiting them, you know, sort of supporting their work. And I think that it's interesting to see how important, you know, because sometimes you think, oh, it's just an honorary role, it's not that important. But to the people who are in these organizations and in these you know, sort of sections of the military, it means a lot to them.
It really does. It really does. All right. Well, let's spill some royal tea. And like we mentioned, Prince Harry celebrated his 39th birthday, but a lot of people noticed that there was no social media tributes from the royal family. So in the past, as we know, the Duke of Sussex's birthday was traditionally celebrated online by the royal family's official accounts. However, they remained silent. So after King Charles, you know, acceded the throne last year, birthday tributes on social media have been reserved for working members of the royal family and some of their children. So we don't need to get up in arms about this. They're kind of scaling back the birthday traditions a little bit and just keeping it for senior members of the royal family. Probably so nobody gets offended and we don't talk about it, but we just want to settle this once and for all that it is just for senior members of the royal family.
I know, even though they're making it very clear so that it doesn't become a story, it still manages to become a story. Maybe next year we'll all understand how it works and no one will sort of, you know, be looking for drama. But I'm sure that there was some, you know, phone call, text, FaceTime, whatever it was between the family members, even if they are going through, you know, a difficult time in their relationship, they're probably still saying happy birthday.
I'm sure. Yes. I'm sure a little text here and there. I'm sure that went a long way, but we'll have to wait and see. All right. Well, Meghan Markle's estranged father wants to meet his grandkids before it's too late. He told Good Morning Britain in what he said would be his final interview. I feel like he said that before, but he said, I'm heartbroken. I am very upset. This is a cruel thing to do to a grandparent, to deny the right to see a grandchild. He added, in California, I can actually sue to see them, but I don't want to do that. The other thing is I've done nothing wrong. There's nothing that points to say I'm a bad guy. You know, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about how if they should reconcile with Thomas Markle, if they should reconcile with the royal family. I mean, he has done a lot of questionable things in the past with staging the paparazzi photos. You know, they both tried to make this relationship work, and it just doesn't seem like that's ever going to happen again.
Yeah, and it's another situation where the more he gives these interviews, although he swears it's the last one, it keeps happening, you know, the less likely it is that there will be any sort of relationship or reconciliation. And that's really hard. It's really hard to have a parent that, you know, especially when you have children that you just sort of have to cut ties with. I know a lot of people can probably sympathize with that or empathize with that. It's just a really difficult situation all around.
It really is. All right. Well, let's break down the royal rules. And this week we are joined by author of the new book, After Elizabeth, Ed Owens. Now, he is going to discuss how the monarchy modernizes in the upcoming years now that King Charles is king, and if they regret how everything went down with Harry and Meghan. Take a look. Thank you so much for taking the time and chatting with me today all about your new book, After Elizabeth. Congratulations. It is definitely an interesting read. So tell me, what gave you, what prompted this book? What gave you the idea for this book? And why did you want to sit down and write this?
So thanks very much for having me on.
Of course.
The idea behind the book was really this loss of confidence in the monarchy among younger British people. It's something I had remarked on and noticed really since about 2013 that things were changing demographically in the UK. And then what seemed to be the real hit was both the news around Prince Andrew and then subsequently Harry and Meghan's departure from the UK. And suddenly, when there were all these opinion polls at the time of the Queen's death and then in the lead up to the King's coronation, we could see that very dramatically support for this institution had fallen off, especially among the under 25s, but also among the under 40s. And I think that's a real concern to the monarchy, and that it needs to find ways to re-engage that constituency.
Do you think that looking back now that maybe the royal family thinks they made a mistake in not trying to make it work with Harry and Meghan, you know, because they wanted to still serve the royal family, just not in the same capacity that they were. And like you said, at the time, their ratings were through the roof. Do you think that they look back at that maybe with some regret?
I think they have to see it with some regret because of the sheer scale of allegation, revelation that has emerged out of Harry and Meghan split from the family, and better, keep them close than have them alienated from the institution, as has been the case. Because, of course, outside the institution, they've struggled to carve out new identities for themselves, carve out new roles. And as a result, the first 2 years was all about sort of funding their lifestyles, mainly by talking to the press and talking out in new ways, as part of these highly paid documentaries and the book, of course, that Harry prepared. So I think the royal family will regret what happened. I think the king still has to be seen to at least hold out an olive branch to his youngest son. He needs to take the moral high ground on this issue, in the hope that maybe reconciliation would be possible one day. And of course, there were people at the time urging for some kind of new deal with the then Sussexes, that they be accommodated in terms of this desire to have a kind of half in, half out existence. And I think looking to the future, the royals are going to have to take that kind of idea a bit more seriously, especially with the children of the Prince and Princess of Wales. At least two of whom, the younger two children, probably won't have as clear a sense of destiny sort of laid out in front of them as Prince George will.
Yes, Ed definitely brings up a lot of interesting points in that book, and, really stresses the fact that in order for the monarchy to survive, they're going to have to modernize.
It's such an interesting take. With all the royal books that are out there, this one actually has a really interesting point of view.
It definitely does. All right. Well, pick up your copy if you haven't already. All right. Let's move on to our royal history moment of the week. And Princess Diana's famous sheep sweater has broken some serious records. So according to a press release from Sotheby's, the sweater sold for a total of $1.143 million, with bidding jumping from $190,000 to its final price after a 15-minute bidding battle. It was offered with an estimate of about $50,000 to $80,000. So it broke the record set by Diana's Victor Edelstein evening gown, which made fashion history when it sold for just over $600,000 back in January. So this kind of blew that out of the water, but not surprising. This was probably the most famous thing she ever wore, maybe next to the revenge black dress. But, I have a sheep sweater. Like, I love it.
It's totally iconic, isn't it? I mean, it's the most expensive piece that Diana's ever worn. It's the most expensive sweater ever sold. I mean, this is actually, I think just the sale of this sweater is historic, on top of the sweater actually being historic. I'm dying to know who bought it. Someone asked me, is it more likely that it was Kim Kardashian or Meghan Markle herself?
Right. No, you wonder. I wonder if Kim's going to be wearing this to the Met Gala next year, you know?
Yeah.
No, you hope that it's in the right hands, that it's going to be preserved, you know, maybe put on display, that other people can, you know, not enjoy it, but like, you know, it's a part of history, be able to witness it and, you know, take good care of it.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I hope it's been, you know, it's been bought by some museum or preservation society, and not someone who's going to wear it to Target.
Right. Exactly. But you might see mine in my knockoff at Target. All right. Well, that is it for this week.
Target, but not the real one.
Not the real one. Definitely not. All right. Well, that is it for this week's episode of Royally Us. A lot of big news this week, and I will let you know if I see Prince William walking the streets of New York next week.
Please do.
All right. Bye, guys. For more news, content, and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below and visit usmagazine.com.